Ladies and gentlemen, the president for PubMatic, we have Mr. Kirk McDonald. Could we have a huge round of applause, please?
Thank you very much. I am very excited to be here. You know, it's always an interesting challenge to prepare for keynote presentations, partly because what I've learned over time is you have to prepare not just to do the keynote, which is what is the subject matter that the audience might care about. Having never been to AdTech in New Delhi and not being positive that I knew the audience, that was a challenge. But you also have to prepare for the time of day. So it's to remember that if you're the keynote right before beer, drinks, and networking, how many would rather go to beer, drinks, and networking before this presentation? There's an honest soul. There's one, two, all right, great. Former PubMatic employee, current PubMatic employee, all right. So I also always have to think about as well, what do you do in a keynote at this point in the day? So I do want to thank our host, AdTech, for inviting me to present and putting on an amazing conference. Day one is amazing. I do want to congratulate all of you for a great show. The programming seems really amazing. I've sat and listened to a couple of sessions. The exhibitors that are outside, just world class. And the keynote speakers, except for myself, really top-notch, world-class event. So I'm reminded at this point in the day, do I actually do a keynote which is about revelations, new things, either in research or findings? Can you absorb more information now? Or do a keynote which is about reminders? And I made the decision that this keynote is more a reminder of what we all know already and have known and understand probably for the last few years about where our industry is going. But if you don't start putting these things together, I still don't think behavior changes. So there is a lot of repetition of content that is required for us to actually affect change. And ultimately, that's what we need to do. So media and the automated future, some global trends. So if you'll allow me, let's dive in this together, and let's see if we can keep this interesting and have some fun. All right, so thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Kirk McDonald, and for those of you who don't know what PubMatic is, I am the president of the company, been there 5 years. PubMatic is an automation company. We actually believe that our role is to be the independent provider of technology to our clients and to support what really remains today an open media environment. We have to support the publishing industry. We have to support the agencies who need programmatic tools to buy into publishers' environments. We want to help publishers realize all the potential of the digital assets, the connections they have with consumers. We think to do this, it requires having a real sort of focus on innovation, a focus on understanding where the industry is going, but also keeping and maintaining our independent status. That's a critical part, we think, since if the technology companies start blurring their role between technology provider and media company, it begins to be a very challenging conflict for the customer set. So that's kind of what we've done. As I said, when I thought about putting this presentation together, I really wanted to think through how do I get started talking about where we're going? And I thought nothing better than talk about two things primarily, which is why are we here? So AdTech, the first word is advertising, and the second piece being the consumer. So when I looked at advertising, I decided literally just look at the etymology of the word in English, and again, just to understand some of its roots. All the variations of the word all get back to this message of changing a mind, to take notice of, to make someone aware or call attention to. Ultimately, it speaks to short-form storytelling with the effort being around changing the mind of the person who hears the story from one particular point of view to another. So a successful ad tells a story and changes the intention of the person that hears the story. I just thought very interesting. But then I also thought about the consumer, because so much of our conversations over the last 5 years, especially in the AdTech part of advertising and media, has been about targets and profiles and data segments. When did this person, this human, become just a data segment? When did the conversation only become about targeting based on past behaviors or abandoning shopping carts? We seem to have forgotten that the art of persuasion can rely on the science of persuasion, and both can actually work in harmony together. So, what are we going to cover today? I wanted to start by focusing on what I think is a key thing we forget to talk about sometimes, which is, what is the global state of consumer attention? What is happening as well as consumers themselves take on automation? I think there was a wave one of automation. I've intentionally not used the word programmatic, and I'm going to try to do most of the presentation without talking about it, despite the fact that it's part of what we do. This wave one of automation, I think, created an age of relevance, which is where we are today as publishers and marketers. I think wave two of automation is where the business change needs to take place. So we'll talk a little bit about the tools available there. Then we'll touch on some of the macro trends. This isn't new information, but maybe you want to see some of the global stats. We'll talk about that, because this is the part that turns into how do we monetize now in this world. So what are the building blocks that you need to sit on that lead to the pathway for you to be successful? What the foundation makes that happen? John Gallagher, the last speaker, spoke to one of them. We know the relevance of data, but do we really understand what it means to activate your data, and how are you making sure that's really in your organization? So we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. All right? Ready to dive in? Let's go. All right, so the global state of consumer attention. The digital media sky is limited by attention. When I put the title together, it really hit me. Almost across the globe, with India being an exception, the actual user growth, internet user growth, is slowing in every country worldwide, almost every country, India being a notable exception. That growth rate everywhere else indicates a little bit of leveling off, which means that penetration is maxing out. You simply are not going to have exponential growth simply in user uptake of internet access. It's a key thing to understand. Growth in India, especially fueled by some behaviors recently, as you've had a new free 4G network launched in market, I guess some 6 months ago, all will cause rapid adoption, but even that will itself cap out. So the limit here of the sky is by the number of users that will actually come on board. Another point is this: we actually are stuck with 24 hours in a day. We sometimes forget that. So with 24 hours in a day, the other thing that is beginning to cap out is the average time spent on media has stopped at about 12 hours per day. Suddenly it means that you can't consume any more hours, because you do need to sleep and commute to work and a few other things. So there is another limiting factor on your growth opportunity. Now, on the flip side of this, we seem to be launching more web properties, more apps, more services at an alarming rate. We crossed 1 billion websites in 2014. This is the last time a big data set was collected on this. We're well past that now, and that's just on display. Since then, mobile and mobile apps have exploded. We are finding more and more ways to create a new touch point, a new interface with the consumer. And the promise is that every glass surface, every surface around you will actually be alive soon. So what does that equation work out to? It works out to math that doesn't work. If T is attention and N is the information that we're creating, we are creating infinite information chasing finite attention. That equals 0. Every one of us here is fighting for consumer attention. We are all battling over this sort of impossible math of putting infinite choice when attention is not infinite. We are humans consuming infinite digital, which puts us in a battle for these 3 things: reach, frequency, and duration of time spent with a consumer. And this is not just our ad messages, it's every new publishing property that you want to create. You are now forced to steal time from someone else, something else. Because I'm either watching TV at this time, I'm on my social media properties, I am buying something intentionally, but you are going to have to divert my attention. And now the efforts to divert attention versus introduce something into empty space are two very different challenges. This is what we're up against. So when did marketing, communications, and advertising get this difficult? Because it really wasn't. There was a time it was a lot easier than this, and we remember that time, and I think it's our memory of that time that we need to actually get over really quickly to move forward. So let's first go back, and this doesn't take us long because it's, again, not revelations but reminders of what we need to do. So when did it change? I would say it was the first wave of automation. We put technology in the hands of consumers. Media used to look like this. There was this mass media model where the content and the distribution channel controlled when, where, how you consumed, and the platform of consumption. That mass media model was powerful because the content producer owned both content creation and the distribution. So you waited till the newspaper was available at newsstand. You waited till the magazine delivered on Thursday. You couldn't see it before that date. And if the TV show was airing on Thursday night at 9, there was no other option. That changed dramatically. In this model, though, we all learned a bunch of skills that we probably need to unlearn. Publisher-controlled model, marketer-controlled messaging, linear distribution, based on behavioral psychology, stimulus response. So I'd run my ads and I would do prototyping and testing on the ads. I'd see what worked. I would then react and make changes. I had time in between. All of this is very common knowledge, and everyone here has taken a marketing class, so we all know the hierarchical effects of marketing, which is I generate attitudes awareness. I actually give you knowledge about the product. I create preference. That preference built up over time turns into conviction. Conviction turns into action, and I generate money. Clear as a bell. Until, remember her? Not an audience segment, but an intelligent human, and we gave her IT. We gave her it. We gave her information technology. Suddenly, every one of us has in our hands an ability to control and shut down messages that are not relevant to us, that are not related to something we care about. And that is a really powerful thing. But I think as marketers, those who love advertising, those who enjoy storytelling, enjoy making persuasive arguments, need to remember that respecting this consumer doesn't mean lip service. It means changing our behaviors if we're going to be successful. It means understanding that data is a pathway to creating an intimate communication with this person, not just something that I collect and look at. Because when, with IT, with information tech, she or he will block ads or avoid all of my efforts to interrupt a moment that she wants to own. Okay. Media and this interactive dialogue is the only way it works now. Now the content producers and distributors, both advertising and original content creators, or even service providers, need to actually introduce suggestions and actually look forward to that being carried over and connected and expanded on with a social network around it. Publishers need to introduce ideas and let those ideas float. You have to start considering what is the foundation upon which I'm going to create conversation around the points I want to make. Need to think less like content pusher and more like platform for dialogue. And this is a critical change that publishing needs to take on, both on the agency, creative side, as well as on the actual publishing of content side. Simply put, when impressions are everywhere, and they will be everywhere, it's not content that is king anymore, but actually relevance. So we have to adjust to this new world. And when relevance is king, looking for a resonance of your message is a critical part of what you need to do. So what are we doing in this age of relevance, and how is it different? This is the age of follow, like, share. This is the age where that network effect is the only way that you will matter. This is a time where you have to understand the person that's about to see your ad or read your content in such a way that when you start the conversation, much as the last presenter spoke to, you have to understand, will they extend it and what might they say about it? And you have to be prepared for all the repercussions that come as a result of that. Mastering this science of relevance is where some are winning. Facebook, clearly. BuzzFeed. But even more local to you, I love these guys, WikiFeeds. WikiFeeds has hacked virality. This company is understanding how do we take data and take a disaggregated approach to my distribution model, where I can actually create the audiences beyond confining them to some place, and I allow them to actually live with the content where they want and when they want. Vice, again, focus purely on millennials with a clear focus on controversial, topics. Or Netflix. Netflix, proof of the fact, by the way, that we misunderstand today's consumer if you imagine that they're not willing to pay for content. If it's as simple as make it free all the time, they have actually broken the mold and been successful. Some of you have seen the case study, so a closer look at this in just the high points. How big data factored into their success, and I really think this is just a story to really understand. First, House of Cards, which I'm assuming some of you here have seen, before they actually greenlit the House of Cards property or content play on Netflix, they actually did all of this research in the background. They watched how many people watched David Fletcher movies, the David Fincher movie, The Social Network, and they watched how many people watched it from beginning to end, not just who many started the movie. They then looked at launching a British version of House of Cards and how well it was watched. Those who watched the British version and also watched Kevin Spacey films were also part of their study, and they cumed what that audience was by looking at user behavior. No one knows this, but Netflix made 10 different cuts of the trailer based on different viewing behavior. They literally just took from the content 10 different cuts to actually promote the movie to different audiences. They tracked when you pause, when you rewind, when you choose to fast forward on the content to figure out what in the subject matter matters. They looked at browsing and scrolling behavior, what time of day you watched, day, rate, hour, where you watched by zip code, the devices you chose to watch on, mobile devices versus large screens and home, and the ratings given, about 4 million per day. All of this is the data they collected to actually create a successful product in that. That's changed behavior. That's not just saying data matters. That's saying that I've actually got to create a platform that will grow my business that's based on these 4 founding blocks. And this is fundamentally the end of the presentation as well. This is it. How are you doing and managing data? John Gallagher said it really well. It is your most valuable asset is your first-party relationship with your consumer and your house of that data. It means nothing, though, if you don't do analytics on top of it. So data itself is useless. That would be the equivalent of saying that I've got crude oil, so I must be rich. No, you've got to refine that into something that is actually a usable asset. That's where analytics come into play. To do optimization and ultimately to have full control over your distribution, you are going to need technology. Either technology you've built your own, in the case of Netflix, or technology you can lean on that is independent and existing in marketing. That's what supports our business. That's why we hope we exist and stay relevant. But these are those founding blocks for success moving forward. That's what Netflix did to grow their subscriber base. And just off Netflix, just off House of Cards, we're successful in doing that. That's what it means to actually publish in an age of relevance and to keep that. Share of attention and share of wallet are directly related as a result. So I use 2 different examples, 2 that you know very well. Google and Facebook. Their ability to hold the attention of the consumer, keep a disproportionate share of those 12 hours a day through their properties is translating globally to about 70 to 80% share of digital ad spend. Right now, according to the Mary Meeker report, 85% of incremental ad spending will go to Google and Facebook. Very exciting in terms of thinking about how relevance can matter. Very concerning if it means that the rest of the industry, including providers of technology like us, have to divide up 15%. Because as 85% grows to 90%, 15 turns to 10, and higher and less. And that begins to be challenging, unless we can actually take some lessons from what they're doing and apply them into our part of the ecosystem and what we're doing differently. Okay? Let's talk about automation wave 2 then, because wave 2 is the business change that needs to follow. So the consumers did what they did. Consumers got great technology. We gave them these powerful things called cell phones. And as I am more than 30 feet away from mine, I get nervous. When was the last time you were 30 feet away from your cell phone for more than an hour and felt comfortable? That is just a powerful piece of information technology in the hands of a consumer. We gave them an ability to actually DVR shows first, and now just stream on demand. All of that was automation wave 1 for the consumer, but automation wave 2 really is the business side. This is where you have to change your business. And I don't know how many of you are ready to. A lot of us get together, and the danger is that everyone who's here already believes this to be true. So we get together and talk among ourselves about how true it is. We get excited about what we need to do, but then we go back to an office where we are 10% of the company, and the rest of the office does not believe they need to change. Here's what I think you need to remind them. Technology accelerates everything, and they shouldn't be afraid of technology. Automation revolutionized the automotive industry, and it was just automation. The idea of individuals building cars was replaced with individuals managing computers that actually put and assembled the cars. Automation, technology accelerates everything. There was a time where the way that we traded stocks was someone would run around with a sell order and someone would run around with a buy order and hand change those things. With algorithms, we've gone to screens, and everything has sped up. So why wouldn't we accept that technology should accelerate everything? The concept of this martini drinking madman should actually change, and that the ideas are no longer enough for you to be successful in media. And I encourage you to remain evangelists in your organization from making change that reality. This is now what we live. Advertising investments, data metrics, social data tools, audience metrics, data suppliers. You do have to talk to DMPs. You do have to work with SSPs. You do have to work with DSPs. There is an ad exchange in the middle. Some people call themselves a trading desk, all of which just to actually turn the relationships that content providers have with audiences into monetization in an effective way. But why would we resist this when we've gone from actually marketing in a push model where we said one thing to everyone, to marketing in an individual way where we need to actually have an opportunity to have 1 million, sometimes 1 billion different conversations with your consumer. And your consumer, because they have IT, completely filter you out if you're not relevant. This is the new dashboard we need to look at. Buying consoles that help you do discovery and planning of your media buys, holistic inventory management platforms that allow you to actually control who has access to the impressions you want to make available, at what time, at what price, when, where, and with format. This is your future, and while you may know it, I'm reminding you that if you don't find a way to actually demystify the programmatization of media, programmatic media, simply technology accelerating media buying and selling, the word is automation, you've got to blow up that word programmatic inside your organization because there's still too many people that hear the word and assume that they know what it means and therefore are already passively resisting your desire to help your organization change and be prepared for its relevance in the future. It will mean that they will need to learn new terminology. And some of it is complicated, probably not to this room. But you have to find a way to be the evangelist to this inside of your organization. Making change a reality is not something that's easy. I think that the biggest problem that we have is that the bigger our companies are, there is a structural inertia and an unwillingness to change. And by the way, I think this is all the failures of success. The bigger you are, the less willing you are ready to change. The older you are socially inert and you don't want to change. And the more successful you are, you're very proud about what you did in the last 40 years to be who and what you are as a media entity, as an agency, to adopt and change, to simply do it a little bit different. It's why when I went to the example of those that have really taken on success, taken on making relevance a part of their messaging, those were 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and 15-year-old companies. There was no company there that had been around for 20 years yet. Inside your organization, you need to bring this formula alive. Change is going to equal to, and pressure to change is going to equal to, creating dissatisfaction with the current state. And I encourage each of you to work on that. Then share with everyone how you actually move to a future. That vision is a key part of how you will get your colleagues, your bosses to move forward with you. And finally, introduce the process, demystify the technology. Do not use the big words to make yourself sound smart. Instead, find other words to actually make the conversation easy to move forward. That's the only way we get there, because this wave 2 of automation is for the business side, but you have to take it on or you're not going to be successful. All right, so because we said we're going to do trends, I owe you guys trends. So let's do a couple of macro trends that are going on, but you already know these, right? So we know data is playing an increasingly important role in marketing. Media consumption continues to shift to mobile and ... Who wants to guess what I'm going to say after mobile? Video, that's right. See, I told you I already knew that. I do want to talk about the growth of programmatic. It's the only time in the presentation I'm intentionally using the word programmatic, because programmatic simply means the automation of what's happening in media. Nothing more, nothing less, so let's not make it a hard word. I do want to talk about these two things, though, at the end, which might be new to some of you, which is what's happening around control of ad decisioning. The act of controlling how the ads are finally decided. This is the last millisecond before the ad is seen by the consumer, how important that is for publishers moving forward. And then I want to talk about what's happening on the other side of that, which is how are agencies and marketers now beginning to buy in a programmatic world that actually involves this sort of trend called header bidding. So we'll dive into those two things there as well. All right? So the growing role of data. Here are the statistics. 97% of display ads use audience-based buying already today. 52% of advertisers are planning to increase their spend and move dollars to programmatic or move dollars into audience-based or database buying simply because it's available. Those are two powerful statistics that help you make your case. We already know this, which is the dollars are following the eyeballs, finally. So you're seeing the dollars in display media flatten out. The growth is not happening there. Hyper-growth happening, though, in mobile and video. This is simply because, again, finite, 24 hours a day, and of those hours a day, the minutes spent with mobile are going up. The minutes spent in video are going up. Desktop internet minutes are going down from 2014 to 2018. Okay? Video is the most watched type of content, and we expect by 2018, 69% of total internet traffic will be based on video. Here's what's happening as programmatic plays a role in that, simply because this is how automation is helping those places grow. In mobile, 74% of total programmatic spent is mobile this year. It's a great opportunity simply because of the volume of impressions in mobile and the variety of data that you can bring into play. Across videos, almost 70% of programmatic video share of total video spend will be, 69% programmatic video share will be the total of video spend by 2017. So the CAGR growth on video and mobile are exponential compared to things like display. I talked quickly about this. Header bidding is in the news. Those in the room that understand or know what header bidding is, you can't have escaped it over the last year. So header bidding, very quickly, is simply the ability to move the ad decisioning logic from a third-party ad server to the publisher's page. That's all it is. So imagine that on the top of the publisher page, I can actually control and ingest a decision at the page, right? This has actually allowed publishers to turn around what has been the leverage in auctioned inventory. In auctioned inventory, primarily the bidder had a tremendous amount of power. When the publisher puts the ad decisioning on the page in the form of a header or a wrapper, The wrapper is a container tag that houses multiple header solutions. The publisher has turned the auction around to their advantage. Everything that has happened here around header bidding is as important an inflection point and change in the industry as ad serving when it was first introduced. So when ad serving was introduced, it was a pivotal change. It actually happened before Netscape launched the first browser. The concept of dynamically serving an ad to property on the internet actually existed first, but it really emerged and grew with DoubleClick. It became so important that in 2007, while not a lot of people were looking, somewhere in a 90-day window, actually it was shorter than that, around 60 days, Google bought this little company called DoubleClick for $3 billion. That was so important that within that purchase, which was the first announcement, so right after that purchase announcement, Yahoo chose to buy another ad server called Right Media for around $900 million. Microsoft got scared by all of this, so they bought the other large ad server in the world called Atlas, and they had to buy all the assets of the company Aquantive to make that happen. That was $6.2 billion. And WPP turned around and said, whoa, we see where this is going. We got to buy the last big ad server out there, and they bought 24/7, which was an ad network that also had an ad server. OAS is, I think, is what it was called, right? And if you go back and check, spring of 2007, $10 billion of acquisitions took place in less than 60 days, and no one was watching. I think the introduction of header bidding and wrapper is as monumental to the future of publishing as was that moment. Because in that moment, DoubleClick controlled the last moment that an ad can change or be decided before it lands on your publisher page. That was a powerful thing to control, because DFP, which the majority of you sit on, 80 to 90% of those in publishing use it, is such an important part of controlling that. And then we shouldn't then be surprised that they have such a large share, because they own a lot of first-party data and a tremendous amount of control about what ads get showing where, right? So this movement towards header bidding, which takes that decision logic and puts it back on the publisher's page, is re-empowering publishers to have control over this very critical thing that slipped away in 2007, which is the ad decisioning. Okay, 50% now of publishers are using header bidding, but I still don't know that you know what you've got. 75 of publishers use 5 or more header bidding partners in that page, which means that all this integration work is getting tiring. It's what's caused the need for a wrapper to show up. But here's proof that bringing decision logic to the publisher's page work, 30 to 7% increase in CPMs just by doing that against this secondary inventory that publishers used to manage in an auctionable environment. It's a key trend, and I think we should all pay attention to where this one goes over time, all right? So, one more thing. I think this gets more important going forward. So this is all happening, do I have a pointer here? Yes. I do. I don't know if you can see that. This is all happening on what has been primarily where inventory has been being driven by performance media, because most publishers have sort of still used their ad server to tier their inventory. They're still supporting a waterfall by dealing with remnant impressions in one place. So we're watching from 2015 to 2019 that part of the media grow by a 17% CAGR. This control of header bidding and wrapper, I think, is going to play a really important part, though, in the blue area of the chart, which is brand-oriented programmatic spend is coming online. So between 2015 and 2019, we're looking at a 53, we'll go from 53% of programmatic spend being brand-oriented to 77% of it being brand-oriented. So the $8 billion opportunity will grow to $16 billion. But the real importance of header and wrapper bidding is to take that $9 billion as it grows to $55 billion and actually who gets that growth. All right? That is going to be the key part of why header and wrapper matters so much. So let me talk about what's on the other side of that. I'm actually going to get to that in a second, because I do want to talk to you about what marketers will do in response. So remember I said earlier, this is the path to success. It's data How much do you have of your own and what you're doing with it that matters. It's an ability to manage your delivery. If you're a publisher, it's holistic inventory management. Even if you're on the buy side, it's what is my relationship with the technology company that is delivering the ads? Because that is a critical part of making sure that you're creating efficiency in the activation layer of media today. Optimization and control. How reliant are the algorithms and who are they benefiting? Are they benefiting me, which means I need an independent technology company working in my favor? Or dangerously, do they benefit a bigger company that provides both tech and is in the media business themselves? Again, we have a strong duopoly in Facebook and Google, and they offer the tech out to partners, but also themselves compete as a media entity. And finally, your ability to go beyond just looking at the data and turning it into reporting and analytics that you're actually making pervasive through your business. This required technology layer is now essential. If you haven't thought about how the pieces are working together, you must. It isn't just that I use Blue Kai for data and I'm using Media Math for buying with, if I'm a DSP and I'm using PubMatic as my SSP, and I've got some reporting coming from another solutions provider. That's not enough. Are they working together, and have you organized your company in a way where you're listening to the groups that are actually looking at this? So whether you lean on tools like Watson or you actually build up a programmatic competence in-house, you've got to actually really empower this department to make change a reality in your organization. Data activation is going to be how you get different. That's what John just walked you through, so we won't labor on that. You've heard it multiple times today. It is a critical path to your success. This evolution of ad decisioning, I think, is critical. Long gone are the old days of waterfalls. Header bidding is very 2013 through now. This idea that you should be thinking about now, if you aren't, is how are you doing server-to-server integration in header and wrapper? So if someone in your organization is not having that conversation and you're not aware of it, you should ask about it. Ultimately, is ad serving itself changing, and what will the future of that be, which is an omni-channel ad server. Remember, every ad server, DFP was built in 2004, 2005, and the world has changed dramatically since then, so how is that evolving for you? On the buy side, I do want to talk about the biddable I/O. As we now access more and more impressions that are actually controlled through header bidding, there is a need for the buyers of media to seamlessly cut through all the priority and all the multiple auctions required to actually have an ad deliver where it's supposed to. So forgive me for what might sound technical. I was an English major, so trust me, it's not any more technical than this. When you buy a PMP, a private marketplace deal, or you actually buy through the auction, your delivery is not guaranteed. You're in an auction. Truth is, you're in about 3 or 4 auctions. So you compete inside of your DSP to actually be the bid or the bid that gets sent over to the publisher. When you are on your way there, you compete in the exchange, and when you get to the publisher, you compete with everything else that the publisher has ranked. So if you're using that as a way to actually buy your inventory, it definitely has non-guaranteed outcomes. So the discussion has been the introduction of private marketplace guarantee. Private marketplace guaranteed also fails at doing this. There will be introduced, a couple of companies now have done this, PubMatic has, an ability for you to negotiate priority serving inside of the publisher's ad server if they house a wrapper or a header bidder, so that you can actually negotiate that, which basically is all the benefits of a direct insertion order using programmatic pipes to enable it. A new trend to watch for. So I told you, watch header bidding and watch this evolve as well. Not going to take you through that because I have only 2 minutes left. I want to remind you about her, though. Ultimately, we all got into advertising because we love storytelling. We love telling persuasive arguments. I celebrate the fact that we still get to do that. I just get excited about the fact that I have new tools to do it. I'm encouraging you to be the evangelist in your organizations, to remind them that you're still in the business of amazing storytelling, that you're still going to use creative to change minds. You are still going to change someone's intent, but you have to rely on science now if you're going to differentiate and stand out. And that ability to do that does mean changing some things in your organizational structurally, empowerment of the individuals that understand this. Unfortunately, for some of you, you may have to wait till a couple of people die at their desk. I hope that's not many of you, but you have to be willing to change, and you have to realize the importance of being relevant, because this is an intelligent consumer, very empowered with technology, and only willing to pay attention to you if you truly can create relevant content at the right moment in time to actually create an engaging connection with her or him, all right? So I want you to remain evangelists, be encouraged in what you do, and I do want to say thank you so much for your time today. 48 seconds to spare. Booyah, baby, right on time. Thank you all. So I've got 40 seconds if someone wants to ask a question, or I can treat you guys to beer and drinks. Beer and drinks it is. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you once again. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.